If you haven't heard the news in one of our episodes yet, we've reopened our Ghosts of Harrenhal merchandise store to kick off the summer. So for the time being, you can visit ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com to stock up and look cool in the summer months. Or, in the southern hemisphere, it's a great time to buy a hoodie or sweatshirt. Regardless, don't delay or you could miss your chance. The link is in every episode's show notes. Before we get started today, we wanted to provide advance warning that in today's episode we will talk about difficult topics such as torture and self-harm. If these topics cause you stress or discomfort, you may want to consider skipping this episode and joining us next week.
Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 292 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 20 of A Dance with Dragons, that's Reek 2.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Unless, of course, you have a Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier that includes spoilers, well then we are going to spoil things for you. But regardless, hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I've made it back from my trip.
Oh yeah, where have you been?
I went to visit Ethan in... much like you made a trip back to the homelands. I, too, made a trip back to my homelands of Western Pennsylvania. And we were up there because the U.S. Open, the golf tournament, not the tennis tournament, is being held at Oakmont Country Club in, 14 miles outside of Pittsburgh.
You know how little I know about golf, but I know that that's a particularly hard golf course.
It is. Most consider it the most or second most difficult course, at least in the United States. Pine Valley being the other challenger. Yeah, so we were there. We traversed the course. It looked difficult, but, of course it was going to look difficult to me. But while we were there, so in most golf tournaments, both the golfers who are inside the ropes and the spectators who are outside the ropes and the volunteer staff who's helping out, there were collared golf shirts. That's kind of the appropriate dress attire. But I decided I wanted to do a little advertising for us. So I wore my Ghosts of Harrenhal podcast t-shirt, the one that spells it out the most. It's all it says. Okay. Ghosts of Harrenhal podcast.
All right.
And Ethan comes, he's getting ready, and he comes in to me and sees I'm wearing that. And he said, "Is that what you're wearing?" And I was like, yeah, I'm going to advertise a little bit. He's, of course, wearing a collared shirt of his undergraduate alma mater. And he's like, okay. So we go, and I notice you have to drive to the shuttle and then, get on the shuttle, and it takes you to the course. And as we're waiting in line to get on the shuttle, I noticed that I'm the only person that I see wearing a t-shirt and not a collared shirt. And so I mentioned to him, I'm a little self-conscious. And he's like, I did think it odd that you were repping the graphic tee to a golf tournament the level of the U.S. Open. And so we get there, and I am in a sea of golf shirts. And here I am with my GOH t-shirt. And he texted Stacy and said that I'm like one of 5 in the entire tournament, in the entire golf course. It's just me and like some folks who aren't normal golf course or golf tournament attendees, you might say.
I gotta say, Mackelly, I find this little bit of rebellion of yours quite surprising. I mean, not that you're rules governed, but you're a rules follower.
I am. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. If I like a rule, I will. Yeah. And so he texts Stacy this, and she doesn't believe him. She's like, "Your dad wears a collared shirt around the house. There is no way he showed up to the U.S. Open in a t-shirt." And so Ethan had to take a picture of me slyly. I didn't know any of this was happening to show her. And I did get 2 comments. So
Right, well done.
yeah, one was an English lady, and she looked at my shirt and said, "Ghost of Harrenhal podcast. How cute." That was my English accent. And I just kept walking.
Really good, honestly. I could just hear her. I know exactly where she was from. You know? Pennsylvania, I mean.
Yes,
Western
Pennsylvania. She was
a
a Pennsylvania English lady. And then, but the next guy, unfortunately, wasn't until after we left the tournament. We were eating dinner, and our waiter saw it, and he said he's a huge A Song of Ice and Fire fan, and said he would give us a listen. So,
wow, exciting! Yes, that was well worth it. Well worth the opprobrium you faced all day from everybody you saw.
I was so self-conscious the whole time that I was wearing this T-shirt, and everybody else was appropriately attired. So
it would have been kind of. I thought, I didn't know where the story was headed when you set off. I thought you might be getting dragged off the course by, sort of like
security
heavies for wearing the T-shirt. And this got us notoriety. This was on the Golf Channel on permanent loop. You fighting these guys.
Well, that's what I was hoping for. I was hoping to get a little TV coverage, just wiggle my way up through the crowd to the front ropes and get our GOH on camera, but unfortunately
that guy may know his Song of Ice and Fire, but he's let himself down on golf etiquette.
Yes. But we had a good time. We had a lot of fun. But on my drive back, it's an 8-hour drive, and multiple instances of road lane closure.
We're into zippers again, aren't we? Here we go.
Zippers.
Hey, everybody! It's zipper time.
And I went into it.
There are a few things that come back up, and zipper traffic is one of them.
I went into it with my newfound knowledge of this zipper merge logic. It just didn't help. I just couldn't. It's still just. I don't buy it. I don't accept it.
My feeling is this: a zipper is fine, but it has to be. The zipper has to happen at the first sign that says the lane is closed. You can't wait until if you've had signs for 2 miles saying the lane is closed. Then, if you don't merge, then you are trying to game the system. You're not trying to be a zipper merger.
Right.
You're trying to get ahead of things.
Yes.
So the zipper merge has to happen where the first sign is. Then I'm all over it. Then
sure.
Left, right, left, right, left, right. Let's go.
Yes, and I'm sure if computers were in control of all the cars, it would work flawlessly.
Yeah.
But they don't. Humans do, and humans have a tendency, especially when in a car, to get prickly about things, and I couldn't get into the lane that was going to close. I just couldn't be that guy. So I got into my left lane, and just
people kept zipping past you in the closing lane, didn't they?
Yes, it just get more and more angry. I was like, they're supposed to just go with the flow, but the flow wasn't happening because those people were
those
zipping
guys
down there. Yes, so I still don't get it. I don't accept it.
I don't know if I've told you this, but for years and years and years, I mean, I believe these roadworks started in 2020, and now we're in 2025. My commute, the roadworks have finally done something to my commute. That I have one part of my commute where I merge off one freeway onto what is essentially another freeway. It actually isn't technically. It becomes a freeway in about a mile, but basically from one freeway to another. And that was always the choke point of my commute to work. It was always this one lane exit off the first freeway.
Yeah.
And they've turned it into 2-lane exit. And I have breezed through my commute ever since then. I'm like, and the reason I mention it is because the hold up at that exit was always people doing the late merge.
Yeah.
Was always, and because the lane to exit backed up for 2 or 3 miles, and people would jump to the front of that line, and they would then block the lanes that were carrying on straight.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Sin.
Oh, now you're really talking trouble.
Yeah. But now it's like we just all fly off this freeway. It's, oh my God.
Well, hey, that's good.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah. Maybe someday
my life is measurably better. I mean,
I'm sure. Traffic is a big factor in people's lives.
Yeah. I lived in San Diego, as you know, and that was always kind of like in the back of my head. We loved San Diego. It's a beautiful city and just like a great place to be.
Incredible weather.
Yeah. In the back of my mind, I was always like, God, if I lived close to where I worked, so my commute was easy. But if you didn't, your commute was going to be a horrible nightmare every single day.
I'm sure.
It always put me off putting down roots there.
Yeah, I can imagine. I experienced that this past December when I was in LA and we had to drive like 3 miles and it took us an hour, you know?
LA is worse, I think, than San Diego. But yeah, they have the same problem. They're up against the sea. So there's only a limited number of ways to go from point A to point B.
Right.
Well, enough of this frivolity. Let's get down to business. How did we leave Reek? Last we saw of the new Reek, we were learning that he was Theon Greyjoy. He'd been brutalised and mutilated by Ramsay Bolton and confined to a dungeon cell and forced to eat rats. He was paraded before some guests in the Dreadfort, and Ramsay then told Reek that Reek would accompany Ramsay as he rode into battle. Kelly, why don't we find out where they're going?
All right. Well, Ramsay's men have had Reek washed and dressed for a diplomatic mission. He's to take terms to the ironborn holding Moat Cailin. Anyone who surrenders gets fed and safe passage to the Stony Shore for a ship home. Anyone who stays to fight forfeits their lives. He's given a tired old horse to aid him in carrying out this task.
Reek has 1 day to complete this mission. The thought of failing and the subsequent punishment from Ramsay Bolton is almost more than he can bear. As he rides alone toward Moat Cailin, he recalls that he has been this way before at the front of a huge army. However, as quickly as the thought comes to him, he pushes it away. It is too dangerous. His name is Reek. It rhymes with leek.
Ramsay told Reek that Reek is to pretend to be a prince, but not to let his fresh smell fool himself. He must remember his name. Ramsay knows that Reek will be tempted to betray him. Any man would. But Reek isn't a man. He's Ramsay's creature. He should count his digits before he decides to flee or fight for the Ironborn.
Reek surveys the ruins of the castle. Only 3 towers stand, the Drunkard's, the Children's, and the Gatehouse. Reek recalls that Robb Stark took the Gatehouse tower, the largest of the 3, still seeing all the banners flying from the towers in his mind. Now all that flies is the gold-on-black kraken. He considers the landscape. Only the causeway was passable. The swamps that surround it are teeming with dangerous fauna, including the bog devils and their poisoned arrows. Corpses of men and horses feathered with arrows litter the area outside the ruined castle.
Reek knows the Ironborn won't recognize him. His hair is white and patchy, he's weak and frail, and he looks so old. His thoughts are disrupted by a man hailing him from the gatehouse tower. An arrow slams into the pole of the peace banner Reek holds. The man urges him to hurry as a second arrow sails overhead. Once inside the tower, the man puts a knife to Reek's throat, demanding his business. Reek lies and says that he's Ironborn. The man he once was Ironborn, but not Reek. He also says he's Balon's son, this man's prince. Reek tries to say his old name, but he can't get the word out.
Reek wants to meet with whomever is in charge. It's Ralph Kenning, but he is dying or dead. When the man tells Reek how few Ironborn remain, Reek realizes that Moat Cailin has already fallen, but nobody has told these men yet. The man takes Reek to Kenning, who is indeed dying. He's fevered, covered with sores and scabs. A cheek is hugely swollen, and a swollen arm is crawling with maggots. Reek puts the man out of his misery and asks where the rest of the Ironborn are. To the living guy with him, not to the guy...
Yeah, the timing would be wrong there.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but when we put our dog Lucy to sleep, after we did it, I said to the vet, "Did we do that too soon?" And Carson was like, "Well, that's not the time to ask that question, is it?"
Yeah, well, she's not wrong, I guess.
but the vet said, "No, God, no. You hung on as long as you possibly could." I was like,
right,
okay,
right. He's taken to the hall where men drink ale at a table. Again, he announces himself as Lord Balon's son, unable to say Theon Greyjoy. He's here as a captive of Ramsay Bolton, Lord of the Hornwood and heir to the Dreadfort. He offers the terms of surrender and consequences of resistance. He tosses a letter on the table stating the terms, but nobody opens it.
The men say that Victarion Greyjoy promised to return for them with a driftwood crown on his head. Reek says that the King's Moot chose his uncle Euron, and nobody is coming for them. They are expendable and forgotten. Dagon Cod tells Reek to bugger off before he kills him, but an axe splits the man's skull. The axe thrower is an ironborn man with one arm, who warns anyone else who resists surrender that he's got an axe for them as well.
Reek pulls down the Kraken banner, and the ironborn assemble outside the towers. There are 63, 58 who can walk, 5 who need to be carried. The one-armed man named Adrak Humble walks next to Reek's horse. He tells of his 3 pregnant wives and how he can't wait to count his sons when he gets home. As they approach camp, a son of Lord Risewell leads a column of riders up behind them. The man is surprised how few ironborn there are. 3 times they stormed the castle, and 3 times they were repelled. Reek has a flash of pride, thinking, "We are ironborn." He's momentarily a prince again, but he pushes the dangerous thought aside. He's Reek. It rhymes with weak.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
Baying of hounds herald the arrival of Ramsay. He too is surprised by the small number of ironborn. He had hoped for more. He offers food, drink and medical attention to the ironborn and sends them on their way. Ramsay asks Reek what he would like as a reward. His freedom, perhaps? Return to the Iron Islands? Reek does not like the look in his master's eyes. He asks only for strong wine. Ramsay does him one better. He elevates Reek to a dog. He will wear a collar and sleep with the other dogs.
That night, Reek sleeps amongst the dogs, but with the additional reward of a blanket. He wakes momentarily to men screaming somewhere in the camp, but rolls over and continues his sleep. The next morning, corpses hang from stakes along the causeway, red and dripping blood. Reek doesn't need to count them. He knows there are 63. One of them has one arm, and one has Ramsay's unread letter in his teeth.
3 days later, Lord Roose Bolton's army arrive. A large Frey force makes up the van, and another guards the rear. In its centre rides a man dressed in the distinctive Bolton attire, blood-red tunic, rondels shaped like screaming human faces, and a pink cloak embroidered with red blood drops. Ramsay kneels before his father. However, when the man removes his helmet, he is not Lord Roose.
An angry Ramsay asks what's happening. Roose steps out of an enclosed wagon and says it was simply a cautious move. Roose introduces his new wife Walda to his son, as well as Ramsay's betrothed Arya Stark. Reek feels the girl has grown, which is unsurprising, but soon realizes the girl isn't Arya Stark. The eye color is wrong. He then recognizes her as Jane Poole. The girl says she hopes to make a good wife and give Ramsay strong sons. Reek thinks that's wrong too. Arya would spit in the man's face. However, Ramsay only responds that she will, and soon.
Yes, I think it's funny that Theon recognized that it wasn't. I mean, it's not funny that he'd recognized it wasn't Arya. He would certainly recognize Arya, and he would certainly recognize Jane Poole. But the big giveaway to anyone is Arya's failure to react to Ramsay with, like, Arya's typical venom.
Yes. That was probably a bigger clue than the eye color being wrong.
Yeah. I gotta say, I find the Reek chapters very interesting because it's, I mean, they're horrible. I mean, Theon's not a great guy, and but nobody deserves the treatment that he's getting from Ramsay.
Agreed.
But it is sort of like an interesting sort of like psychological experiment to see, can you do this to someone? Can you beat them down so badly that they don't want to escape from you?
Right.
Because this was a temptation. They put him on a horse. They cleaned him up and put him on a horse. He had a chance to go away. And I do wonder how much of Reek's inner monologue. I mean, obviously Ramsay would love Reek's inner monologue because he is constantly thinking about basically the sundering of his spirit. He is both Theon Greyjoy and Reek. And Reek is definitely in the ascendancy, but Theon's still there. Theon is definitely still there.
He's still there.
But Reek is so afraid of letting Theon out that he keeps him suppressed.
Yes, because Theon will cause trouble.
Right. And I wonder how much of that Ramsay is aware of. Because obviously he's not literally aware of the inner monologue, but you feel that some of Ramsay's actions towards Theon make it clear that he knows that he's not... This battle is ongoing and not over yet.
Right.
He's winning, but if he doesn't keep fighting it, he will eventually lose.
Yes. As long as Reek feels no hope to escape Ramsay, he's going to do anything it takes to avoid the punishment that would come from disappointing Ramsay or breaking whatever trust. But I think if he feels secure in escape, and, therefore that does escape, I could see him returning to some level of Theon. He's changed forever, for sure. I mean, first of all, physically, but then mentally and emotionally as well. But he did manage to rally. When the chapter starts out, you're thinking, there is no way that this guy is going to be able to channel his inner Theon well enough to convince these ironborn to surrender.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, he came and he told them he was here as a captive of Ramsay Bolton. So you don't have to appear noble and princely at that point. Hey, I'm a captive. I have no choice. I'm doing this because I've been told to.
Yeah, that's true.
He doesn't have to be that far above Reek to pass on that message. He has to not be Reek, because if he's Reek, they put him out of his misery there and then.
Yeah.
But if he comes as a broken Theon Greyjoy, well, they can listen to him,
Yeah, and he did feel that swell of pride when the Risewell was surprised how few Ironborn turned his force away three times. So, and he did, Ramsay, like you were saying, Ramsay must know this is a ongoing situation. He has to continue to keep him as Reek. And he tests him at the end of the chapter by offering that reward. And, do you want to go home? Do you want to go with your fellow Ironborn? And surely that was a trap to try and tempt Ramsay to show a little bit of Theon. And, I mean, Reek to show a little bit of Theon. And he was wise enough not to take it.
Yeah.
And...
Yeah, so that's the thing. I think you're right. I think Ramsay does know. He knows that he can never take his foot off the gas here. He can create a Reek creature, but he cannot set it loose. He has to always be reminding it. He has to be needling and cajoling and tempting. I mean, that's the other thing. You've got to constantly be testing the waters.
Yes, right.
And that's why some of these things, it seems benign. I mean, you'd think, if I was Theon in that situation, I'd say, well, it'd be nice to sleep in a tent tonight and maybe eat with you guys. You're my friends.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's just going to take me a couple days to, he theoretically could have stayed with the Ironborn and fought for as long as they could hold out. And if they got captured, ended himself,
Yeah, but that's one thing. You see, I think you're right. I think he's terrified of trying and failing to get away.
Yes,
and
that's
in this
the key.
in this particular situation, they were very comfortable letting him go because where could he go? They put him on a horse down the causeway towards Moat Cailin.
Right.
So he basically had swamp, Moat Cailin, all back towards them. Where are you going to go?
Or further south toward Ruse's
You
army.
could, right, but he knows that's coming too.
Right,
so
there's nowhere to go. Right.
Yeah. And so, but if you gave him a horse and an open road, he might go. Now, might he, what you just suggested, stay with the Ironborn and fight? Maybe, but his conclusion that Moat Cailin has already fallen and they just don't know it yet would probably convince him, let's not do this. Because the thing is, suicide is obviously an option, as you mentioned, and I don't want to trigger any of our listeners, and please, if you have these kinds of thoughts, do seek help. But for Reek, it's got to be something that is at the fore of his mind, but he hasn't done it yet.
That, yes. Right.
He might think, I can't do that to myself, and therefore I better not betray Ramsay.
Yes. You're absolutely right. Because there has to have been an opportunity for that in the time that he's been Reek, and he has not taken it. So he has the will to fight to live. So he might not go down that road.
Although, honestly, eating rats might be considered a form of attempted suicide, really.
Well, that's true.
Cannot be healthy.
He cannot. But he spends much of the chapter, especially at the beginning, well, pretty much throughout the time he's at Moat Cailin, unsuccessfully trying not to recall his pre-Reek life, to the point where, as we said in the summary, he can go as far as referring to himself as his father's son, and also referring to his uncles, indicating that he is Theon Greyjoy. Right. But he can't say the words, I am Theon Greyjoy. And it even goes to the point where during his ride to Moat Cailin, he recalls the direwolf of Stark flying on the towers, and that now it's the gold kraken on black. And then later he thinks, when he's taking that banner down. Yeah. He thinks of the gold kraken of Pike, but he never thinks of the gold kraken of House Greyjoy or the gold kraken of my house. He doesn't ever acknowledge it as the sigil of his own house. And in some ways, it's his sigil. He's the only living male heir of Balon, and in a lot of ways has the strongest case for King of the Iron Islands, if you're going by the rest of the Westeros.
I did find it a bit surprising that nobody said his name. I mean, I get that he might not be able to say his own name, but at least I would have thought at least one of them would be like, oh, you're Theon Greyjoy? And then he could say, yeah, that's the chappie, Theon. Oh,
that's the one.
Okay, yes. I can't say Theon, but that guy. So, because nobody says it, and so it's kind of like, I wonder if they're all like, do you know the family tree? Do you know who this guy is?
Right. Where does he fall in the rank? I don't know.
but it was, so this could be pedantry, but I'm going to ask it here and then reiterate in pedantry if I was right. Is it surprising to you that he knew the outcome of the Kingsmoot?
A little bit. So that's a good question, because it's not like after Euron was proclaimed king, they didn't send ravens out.
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
But you would think that word would spread, as the Ironborn go back to their daily lives, they would talk with merchant people and, word would spread. And now to get to Theon, you would think that there would have been some sort of pre-game preparation here that Ramsay would bring him up to speed. Here's something you can use. Victarion's not coming back. Euron was named king, something along those lines.
But I was a little bit surprised. I mean, that's all reasonable, and I can't really put this in pedantry anymore. But it felt a little bit surprising that it would have even reached Ramsay.
Yes,
how much would they care? To learn this news, and
it would take quite a long, winding train of information leaking out to get to the Dreadfort. But it's also possible that they learn in King's Landing, because they're dealing with the attacks on the Reach, King's Landing sends a bird to Ruse, who sends a bird to Ramsay. You know,
I can see how that would work. Yeah. Okay. Granted, I'll give you that. One question we posed last time has been solved, at least for me, at least 95% solved, which was we know that in the TV show, Theon was castrated by Ramsay.
Right.
And in the last chapter, it wasn't clear if that had happened. There was sort of like mentions of some of his disfigurement and sort of hints that there might be more to it than that. But this time, he definitely indicated that he was missing his gentleman parts.
Right. It's something like taking fingers, toes, and that other thing.
Right,
and
exactly.
That's
so
as much as we get, but unless that other thing is his nose and no one has brought it up yet. But he so often thinks of his missing fingers and never dwells on the other thing. At first thought you would think that other thing would rank higher in his mind, but then I thought maybe he's pushed that the most out of his mind, like you know, almost repress that memory.
This is wild speculation, I assure listeners, but maybe. I mean, again, we don't know if he lost the stones and the column, or he may have lost the desire. I mean, obviously, he probably doesn't have much desires other than to eat a cooked rat. And so with the loss of desire comes the loss of really caring about the loss of it, you know?
Right.
Whereas the fingers probably bother him every single minute of every single day.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. That really does.
Yeah. If he escapes from this torment and is given sort of like, you know, his life back, then I can imagine that the natural order of things reverts.
Yes.
And
you make a lot of sense. And you did.
He was only given one day to negotiate the surrender. To me, that seems enough. Because to me, it's like, this is a 5-minute job. Hey, if you surrender now, he's going to let you go. If you don't, he's going to kill you all.
Right. Yeah. And guess
what else do you want?
Victarion's not coming back, you know?
Right. That's a useful piece of information. Yeah.
Yeah, but Stannis thought that he was going to be able to ride on the Dreadfort from Castle Black and capture it before this army returns. And I guess it turns out it's a good thing that Jon explained why that was a flawed idea. Because, like you said, this didn't take very long. And now the army can head back. Now, it does seem like the Reek plan wasn't the first plan, because the Risewell man says that they had 3 failed attempts. You know,
Did they ride with the Risewells, or were the Risewells here besieging the place?
I think the Risewells were here before Ramsay got there. I think.
So basically, Ramsay and Reek might have just arrived and snapped their fingers and fixed the problems. Yeah.
Yes, because the Risewells and the Dustins attacked the Ironborn on the Fever River, and then I believe they headed to Moat Cailin to meet Ramsay there. So I think they must have gotten there before them. So yes, maybe those 3 failed attempts happened before the Dreadfort men even got on the scene. But Jon told Stannis that, yes, it's known that it's impenetrable from the south, but it's not impenetrable from the north. But the Ironborn proved that it's pretty hard to attack it from the north too. You know,
right?
3 times and three times repelled by a small, starving, no morale Ironborn force.
You've got the towers. You know, that's the defensive position. It's hard to beat that. You know,
right?
Especially in this situation where there's no way to build siege engines and things like that because of the sort of the nature of the geography of the place. You know, you've just got this one causeway running up to it.
Yeah. But you mentioned you've got the towers, right? And yes, you do. But Theon describes in pretty decent detail these ruins of Moat Cailin. It's basically completely dilapidated, broken, crumbling, once upon a time castle that now just 3 towers are all that stand.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
So a question.
Yes.
Is it more dilapidated than it was when Rob came through?
I don't think so.
Okay, this dilapidation is long term.
Yes, 500,000 years like it is. I think he mentioned something is the way it was for half a thousand years or something along those lines. Right. But we know, it's been stated to us in multiple times, that this is possibly the most important strategically defensive location in the north, aside from arguably the wall, which probably is more strategically defensive. But if we eliminate that, and they say it's impenetrable from the south, it protects the north from invaders, advancing armies from the south. So here's my question. Should somewhere along the thousands possibly years since this castle has been a ruin, should some Stark king or lord have made a project of repairing, renovating, resurrecting this place into top, if not at least more fortified conditions?
Yeah, okay. I'll give you credit for logic. That makes perfect sense, and they should have done. I'll offer you a possible explanation. The apparent dilapidation is just in the eye of the beholder. The place looks a mess because it's a castle in a swamp, but it's not as bad as Theon thinks it is. It is actually in a state of reasonable repair, made worse by the presence of dying ironborn all over it. But it stands and it serves its purpose. And
it serves its purpose, yes.
But yeah, I mean,
it's down to 3 towers. One the top of it has fallen off. The other is leaning so far over that, and there's no more curtain walls left or anything. If they spent the time, especially before Aegon's conquering, when there were still feudal kings in the area that might try to attack the north, if they put a real castle there, at least make a habitable, safe, and functional castle.
I wonder if the defense of Moat Cailin doesn't rely on the walls, though. I wonder if the whole plan is that what do you call the inhabitants of this region?
The Crannogmen?
The Crannogmen, exactly. That's the word I was looking for. The Crannogmen pick them off. Basically they from the bogs, they fire their poisoned arrows at them, and even if you get past the crumbling walls, which aren't that strong, you're going to all be dead or dying by the time you get up the rest of the causeway, because you've got to go in like very small, 3 or 4 abreast is all you can manage. And you're so terribly vulnerable.
Yeah,
I don't know. You're raising good questions. I'll give you that.
Yeah, it's probably a mixture of both. I mean, Theon does kind of think through why it's so difficult to attack this ruin from the south, because of the location of the towers and the slippery stones, and you have to turn your back to 2 other towers and all that stuff. But
right.
Probably the bog devil arrows don't help matters, that's for sure, for the opposing army.
So, one of the few named Ironborn is Ralph Kenning. His death is pretty awful. In fact, we spared you some of it. Basically, he pops like a balloon when... it's nasty.
Yeah, the terrible
the
way
maggots
to die.
Thing. Yeah.
And his cheek.
I always remember seeing a TV show about young veterinarians in the UK, and it was just sort of like, following their daily lives kind of thing. And one was like, a pet was brought in to see him, and you could see he was kind of like traumatized by it. It was like, and when the people were out of the room, but he still had the cat or whatever it was. He was like, "Oh, it's maggots! It's maggots!" I was like,
yeah. But yeah,
that
poor
was
Ralph.
nasty.
Yeah, but poor Ralph Canning. I mean, we learned. I think it had to have been a Victarion chapter, that he was one of the main voices urging Victarion to leave Moat Cailin and claim the Seastone chair. And if Victarion had stayed, you imagine this force might have left. First of all, they would have had a significantly larger force here. But they probably would have left Moat Cailin sooner when Victarion realized it's time for us to go. These people were told, stay here, hold it till I come back, even well past the time when they should have left.
Yeah.
So, you know, whether they could escape home at that point or not is another thing. But
yeah,
you know,
the offer obviously was very tempting. You know, you'll get food and some medicine and safe passage to the Stony Shore. But no promise of getting from the Stony Shore back to the Iron Islands. But I guess you stick around on the Stony Shore long enough, some long boat will hove into view.
Exactly. You just gotta camp out there for a while.
Yeah, but you're right. In many ways, the most compelling part is Victarion's not coming back for you. You know, he lost. You've got no support coming. You're gonna die here. You might as well give up and live another day.
Yeah, and the offer sounds great. Food and safe passage. I mean, what more can they ask for? Yeah, and they had to have been considering the idea that Victarion might not be coming back for us.
He's been gone an awfully long time.
And Theon tells us that he left the dregs of the Iron Fleet here, the men from lower houses or no houses at all, and he thinks this is aiding him in his chances of success here, you know, because
a more noble ironborn would not take this deal.
Exactly. Yes, or at least
interesting.
Wouldn't listen to Theon Greyjoy, you know,
right.
And these guys, like you said, they might be counting on their fingers, trying to think how Theon factors into the, you know, the succession order. Like, who is he now? So
they hold all their fingers up and say he's seventh in line. Oh no, that's what Theon would say.
But the one-armed man, with the new children that he's never seen, he kills Dagon Cod and decides basically, for all, we're going to surrender. His name was Adrak Humble. He mentioned 1 rock wife and 3 salt wives, and Victarion had mentioned about humbles that he referred to them as the humble humbles, being blood of thralls and salt wives. So, you know, you're seeing the type of people that were left behind. He's a good example. Right. Yeah. And he also really lacks comprehension of how at least twins are made, because he says that humbles run to twins and he can't wait to get home and count up all his babies. But no twins are made from the male side. So it's all about the female side, how many eggs are there to fertilize. So he really, his comprehension of that was lacking, but I'll forgive him.
You know, my dad and his brother became fathers of twins within 4 months of one another.
Wow. Runs on the McGrother side.
Apparently.
the McGrothers run to twins.
Not so humble either.
That's right.
I have a controversial but horrible opinion about what Ramsay did. I think executing the Ironborn was the right thing to do. These guys are, despite being not very good at it and the lowest of the low of the Ironborn, they're reavers and pirates. You can't just let them go. Especially because Ramsay is the representative of the Warden of the North. You've got a responsibility to the North. Now, I feel like Ned wouldn't have let them go, but I do feel like Ned wouldn't have gone in there and lied to them. What Ned would have told them was, you stay here and you're going to die. You give up now and you're going to die a swift, painless death.
Right.
That's what Ned would have told them.
He also might have given them the choice to take the black, knowing Ned.
Oh, taking the black. back. That's what he would have done. That's exactly what he would have done.
Think
You're
what
absolutely
Jon
right.
would do with 63 ironborn to swell the ranks at Castle Black in Elston.
Wow, that's amazing. You should be in charge, Mackelly.
Well, I don't think Ramsay was thinking about that, unfortunately. But did Theon...
Safe bet.
Yeah. Did Theon possibly know the fate that was coming for them? He wondered at one point on the ride back if Kenning was the lucky one.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
you know...
He knows what Ramsay's capable of. I can't imagine he had
Yes.
great expectations for what he was going to do.
I
do think it's slightly funny that nobody ever opened the note.
I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you whether what you thought was on the letter, was it blank? Did he actually write something out, or did he just assume that nobody there was going to be able to read it and was a blank
I would
letter?
assume you wouldn't intentionally queer your own pitch by putting a joke on the note, saying, "Actually, I'm going to skin you all alive," because
Right.
this was very helpful that this worked out the way that it did. But I wouldn't completely put that past Ramsay, to actually do
Yes,
that.
that's why I thought of it, because Roose would never have
Yeah.
given that opportunity to be found out that way.
Maybe it was
He's
like
lying.
an acrostic. Like if you read the first letter of each line,
Right.
it said "skin you alive," but the actual message was
Yes, it was a cipher. They needed a decoder ring. Was the problem? But another question about this. Ramsay says. So we've mentioned several times now that the Risewell man said, "I'm surprised there were so few because they repelled us the 3 times that we attacked them." Ramsay comes up and says, "I had hoped for more. They were such stubborn foes." Why was he hoping for more? Because it would explain why they gave him such trouble, or because he wanted more subjects to flay and torture?
I think it's 30-70.
Aha.
I think there's a little bit of professional pride dinted by the fact that so few kept them at bay, but it's Ramsay Bolton. Mostly he wants to kill more people. Oh, you know what? Let's go 30-69, 1%. I was going to send some to the wall.
Yes, that's what it was. I was going to do what Ned Stark would have done. So we're going to meet the Boltons here. They're the next. They're going to come through after the execution, and they just really play into this reputation as scary, creepy, dangerous. Roose gives off such a vampire, Dracula, Vlad the Impaler vibe.
Yeah.
He's got the outfit that he really leans in on the intimidating and inducing fear and horror thing with the blood red tunic and the rondels of a human face screaming in agony and the pink cloak embroidered with droplets of blood. And when Reek is kind of, looking over him, he thinks about the fact that Roose doesn't age, kind of like a vampire wouldn't age, and that his eyes are so cold that he wonders if he ever cries, if his tears freeze on his face. It's just very vampire Dracula type vibe.
Yeah. And that's funny, actually, because the last time the Davos chapter we just read there was a werewolf aspect to that.
Oh, yeah.
The phrase accusation towards the thing. So it's kind of like this is the whole sort of 1960s monster trope going on.
Yes.
Here, yeah. But actually, one thing that sort of betrays his humanity, I think, is his choice of wife. Because he chose Walder Frey, one of the many Walders, but the particular one he chose was the heaviest one because he was promised her weight in
gold,
gold. So that seems very human, not very vampire. You know what I mean?
She also maybe has more blood to suck out of her neck.
Well, true, but vampires go for the most beautiful one. That's what a vampire will go for.
That's the other thing with the leeches. Sucking blood. Like there's such a vampire vibe around him. But speaking of the phrase, Theon thinks that there's more cruelty in Roose's little finger than in all the Freys combined. And this is a family who massacred an entire host in their own home and cut the head off of Greywind and sewed it onto their king's body. So,
yeah, and he thinks back to sort of tweaking Roose when Roose visited Winterfell when when Theon was a child, and now he looks at him and he's like, "What the hell was I thinking? This guy's a monster."
Right. And you got to wonder, as this Frey group, because there's a lot of Freys in this army, are making their way through the causeway and seeing the 63 flayed men, if they're questioning their new bedmates, their choice of bedmates, rather. And you know,
this the kind of question you keep to yourself, I feel.
Right.
What have I done?
Exactly.
So the incredibly long story arc of Jane Poole comes to its denouement. We last saw her as Jane, actually, you know, on stage back in Sansa 4 of A Game of Thrones. I had to look that up. It was forever ago.
For us, that was literally years ago.
Yeah. I think she's had a few mentions, maybe even a few glimpses of her. I think didn't Jamie see her in a Jamie chapter?
So here's kind of how the rundown of Jane's life has gone since that chapter when she was taken from Sansa after the sack of the Tower of the Hand and put into the custody of Littlefinger.
Littlefinger, yeah.
In a storm of swords, Roose told Jaime at Harrenhal that Arya Stark has been found and that she was returning north with him. Then the meeting that you're talking about, when Jaime meets her at the Red Keep and doesn't recognize her as Arya, and then calls Brienne into his office and says, "Don't follow the Boltons. That girl is not Arya." And he did say the Boltons know, but implied that they don't care that she is that she's Faria, not Arya. And then in A Feast for Crows, we finally get a clue to her identity when Cersei tells the small council that if this girl plays her part well, the Boltons won't care that she's a steward's whelp dressed up by Peter Baelish.
Right.
So we were starting to get some clues.
Yeah.
But ironically, this Jane Poole is the one who used to mock Arya, calling her Arya Horseface, complete with neighing when Arya came by. So,
I mean, despite that little bit of childish bullying, it's good to still see her in one piece, and she's obviously not. I mean, she hasn't been Reekified, at least, thank God.
No,
and she's obviously willing to play this part, and that's probably a good idea. I mean, the prospects are quite good. I mean, if she presumably understands. I mean, people are calling her Arya. She understands the gig. The gig is pretend to be Arya, and you'll end up as Lady of Winterfell. Pretty good. Pretty much landing on your feet from a position you've been in.
Yeah, minus one little problem.
Which is?
Her husband will be Ramsay Bolton.
She does not know what Ramsay Bolton is like yet. So playing the part for now, she might, once she sort of spends a couple of weeks in Ramsay's company, say, my name's Jane Poole.
I'm Jane all the way. Do I have a horse face? No. Now, it's likely but not certain if the Boltons know that she is Jane and not Arya. But one thing they do know is let me put it this way. If they know that she is Jane and not Arya, they definitely know that Theon / Reek knows the truth, which makes him dangerous.
Okay. Right, but I've got a question for you here, because there's two different people involved here. I am with you. I'm convinced that Roose Bolton knows exactly who this girl is. Well, it doesn't know exactly who this girl is, but knows exactly who this girl isn't.
Right.
Yeah. She's just a girl to Roose Bolton, but he knows for a fact she's not Arya Stark. Does Ramsay know that? Because the thing is, why would Roose tell him that? What's in it for Ramsay to know that? It might be better, if you're Roose and you're plotting things, to tell Ramsay, I'm coming north with Arya Stark and you're going to marry her. That's going to give you the credentials you need to become the Lord of Winterfell.
Right.
why even let it out of the bag that it's all a lie? Because that doesn't help anyone, right? So
Totally agree. Yeah.
So Ramsay may not know. Roose does, Ramsay may not. And then flip it around. Who knows who Reek is? Ramsay certainly knows who Reek really is. But does Roose? Ramsay had a Reek previously. Roose probably doesn't look very carefully at Reek because he's a stinking mess of a human being.
Right.
He probably avoids looking at Reek a lot.
And Theon probably looks nothing like Reek looks now. He might not even notice even if he looked at him unless he looked really hard.
Right. And if you're Ramsay, are you going to tell Roose that it's... Well, that might happen. You might say, hey, that was Theon Greyjoy. Because it needs those two things to come together for them to go, wait a second, we've created a dangerous situation here. Because in all of the North, there's only one person... Well, there's two people who can betray us, our plot here. One is Jane herself.
Right.
But she isn't going to do it. She isn't going to do it because it's in her best interest to keep quiet. But Theon Greyjoy is the one person who can categorically say that is not Arya Stark and ruin this whole thing.
Yes, that
Nobody
makes him
else
dangerous.
Can.
Right.
Exactly. But Roose and Ramsay may not know to put their heads together to get this piece of information. Because if they do, if Ramsay knows, then he's a fool for keeping Reek alive.
Yeah. Yeah. And if Roose discovers that Reek is Theon Greyjoy, who
he
lived
would
his
kill
whole
him
life
in an instant.
Winterfell, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
He would kill him in an instant.
But
so yeah,
now that...
I think those two questions are very interesting. What does each of the Boltons know?
Right. It really is. Yeah. Yeah. We'll have to see. It'll be intriguing to see how that plays out. But
I tell you, actually, one thing I will say. Let me just finish this thought with just one last thing. If Ramsay did know that this was a fake Arya, the moment he met her, if I was Ramsay Bolton, my eyes would have been on Reek.
Oh.
Because I would have wanted to watch his reaction.
Yes. Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Because
Right.
Reek can't hide his reaction, I'm sure. I'm sure Reek reacted like, it's not Arya.
Let's call her Faria.
Exactly.
But maybe...
But there's nothing in this chapter suggesting that that's what Ramsay did. So that's why I think maybe Ramsay doesn't know what's going on here.
Yeah, and like you said, it would make a lot of sense for Roose not to inform Ramsay this really isn't Arya.
It doesn't make more sense, but it's logical that you might not. You know,
it's just no need.
There's no
there's no benefit.
No need. Right.
Yeah. But also, we were just talking about that. Unfortunately, Jane has to marry Ramsay, and that could be really awful because of what we know of Ramsay. But Jane / Arya is his ticket to being the Lord of Winterfell.
Absolutely.
If he mistreats her and the other Northerners catch any wind of the fact that Ramsay Bolton is mistreating the daughter of Ned Stark, the last member of the line of Starks that date back 8,000 years, they might mutiny against the Boltons.
And there's a reason to keep it from Ramsay.
Yes.
Because if you tell Ramsay that this is a fake Arya, his threshold for being malignant towards her just lowers. He's like, oh, it's not even Arya Stark.
We'll just get another one. Yeah.
Exactly. And you're absolutely right. If that word gets out of that, the North rises up against him.
Possibly. You could see
Interesting. All right, let's do some spoilers. The upper tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer levels get you the spoilers. All right, thanks for the spoilers. They were good today. Can you give me some background?
I can. Well, Theon / Reek thinks about the Children's Tower, where the Children of the Forest once called down the Hammer of the Waters to split Westeros in two. Now, Jenny mentioned back in Bran 1 that during their war with the First Men, the Green Seers of the Children of the Forest used their magic to break the arm of Dorne and flood the neck. I'm going to expound a little bit on that. It's said that hundreds of Green Seers convened to call down the Hammer of the Waters. The plan was to break the land bridge that connected southwest Essos to southeast Westeros to stop the First Men from invading Westeros. Where they convened is unclear. Possibly the Isle of Faces, maybe here at Moat Cailin. But the Greenseers were successful in destroying the Arm of Dorne, causing the sea to rise up and break the bridge. Unfortunately, they were too late to stop the First Men, as they already had enough of a population in Westeros to continue their war. However, it's believed that the demonstrations of their power did grab the attention of the First Men, as it's thought to have been a key factor in the peace pact agreed upon by the two sides. But Reek specifically thinks of breaking Westeros in two. That's his thought in this chapter. And it's unknown when, possibly when they broke the Arm of Dorne, or maybe at a later time, the Greenseers again called down the Hammer of the Waters, this time based on the fact that one of the towers is called the Children's Tower, probably here at Moat Cailin. The plan was to flood the neck, creating two separate land masses out of Westeros. The results were not quite as expected. Instead, they managed only to flood the neck, creating the bogs and swamps that you see here today. Mm-hmm. And by the way, some maesters believe that the children of the forest had nothing to do with either natural phenomenon. The thought is that a series of long summers and short winters melted ice north of the Shivering Sea that caused the sea level to rise.
Yeah. You see, that's the kind of maester I would be. Sort of like,
right.
No magic or wonder in my soul. Just like practical explanation for everything.
Right.
Comparison with the television show. I had forgotten that this scene was even in the TV show. I've got to say, I watched the early seasons of the show several times, and then the later seasons, as it got slightly worse. Right. I watched them once a long time ago now, and so it was, so I'd forgotten.
You're not alone, by the way. I have a hunch.
This scene was almost perfectly kept. The one minor difference was that Ralph Kenning represented both Ralph Kenning and Dagon Codd. See, he's sick, but he's not on the verge of bursting open. And he treats with Theon. And he says Theon's name, but Theon does not say it himself. So he knows who he is. And it's Ralph Kenning who gets the axe in the head for refusing, and basically he acts the way you were describing a more senior Ironborn person would act. He says, I am not bowing to, you're either a woman or a dog of Ramsay Bolton, and I'm not yielding this castle to you. And then his sentence is cut short by an axe in the head. Roose and Ramsay are then reunited. Then basically the guy who puts the axe in his head, who basically only has one line in the whole show, says, "We get free passage if we surrender." And Theon's like, "Yeah, sure." And then you immediately cut to the next scene where the guy has got no skin left and is dead.
Ugh, gross. Yeah.
I will say the whole Reekification of Theon is not so strong, I don't think, in the TV show because Alfie Allen's a young, well-fed actor. And, making him look a little bit bedraggled and then cleaning him up again, you end up with a fairly handsome young actor.
Right.
You don't really end up with Reek.
Yeah.
So, after that scene, Roose and Ramsay are then reunited, the son presenting the father with the Ironborn sigil taken from Moat Cailin. In return, this is the moment where Roose legitimizes Ramsay.
Oh, they cut out King Tommen's proclamation, legitimizing him.
The Jane Poole arc is entirely dropped. She is just not here.
Okay.
Pedantry Corner, you beat down my pedantry. I was willing to go there, but you've convinced me that it wasn't. I've actually already forgotten what it was.
So did I. I was just trying to think of what it was.
I know. If I scroll up, I can find it, but I'm determined to think this through and come up with what it was. No, but actually, I think your pedantry is pretty solid. Why the hell are they not rebuilding this place? Is a pretty reasonable question.
Just at least, I mean, the basements are flooded out and filled with snakes, and the place is just completely falling apart. At least make it habitable, If you're not going to rebuild an entire castle, make it habitable in case you need it.
Yeah. I wonder if when the Crannogmen are left to their own devices, they just turn it into this like lavish palace.
Right.
And then, wait, someone's coming, and they'll disappear into the bog and sort of like leave it to decay again. Yeah.
Could be. That sounds about right.
News and notes. We have a sustainer call almost immediately after this episode drops on June 17th. And Mackelly, as always, will reliably send out the invite. No,
already have. How about that?
Oh, wow. Look at you. Fantastic.
And speaking of sustainer calls, we have a new sustainer. Devin has joined us at the small council level, which is currently our highest level. So, wow. That is fantastic. Thank you. And Devin joined after I sent the message out about the sustainer call with the details. So I messaged Devin specifically and said, hey, here's the info. We'd like to see you there if you can make it. So
excellent.
Yes.
We'll get to meet him. That'll be great. Thank you, Devin. Right. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And just a reminder, the merchandise site is still open for a little while longer. So stock up now while you can. You can wear it in almost any circumstance. Church, golf courses. Mackelly doesn't care. Get married in that thing.
In Western Pennsylvania, there is a term. It's derogatory, but it's endearingly derogatory, called a yinzer. Because in Western Pennsylvania, the multiple of you
is yins. You've told me this.
Yes,
I've actually used it in the sentence.
Okay,
self-consciously.
Probably not as self-conscious as I was at the U.S. Open, but Ethan, yinzer's basically when you picture a yinzer, there's someone who would wear a Steelers starter jacket to a fancy dinner or to a wedding or something
Absolutely
like that.
As
long as it has the Steelers logo on it.
Yeah, I totally get it.
It's formal wear. It can be worn anywhere. So, you can wear your GOH merch just like a Yinzer would wear.
GOH Yinzers. That's what we're looking for. Yeah,
exactly.
All right, let's conclude this one. So the Reek transformation is near complete, but as we've discussed, this will never be complete. It's going to be an ongoing battle because Theon isn't gone. He's just in abeyance at the moment.
And it was a horribly painful, awful death for the Ironborn. I mean, Theon has gone on and on about the pain in having his ring finger flayed. These men had their entire body flayed. And I keep thinking about the son who carried his dad from Moat Cailin to the camp. I couldn't let them go because I have a son. Yes. I'm a dad. I don't know. But as you mentioned, in a cruel way, was it better than the alternative of they had no life in Moat Cailin. They were just waiting to die from a poison arrow, a bad belly, starvation, eaten by a lizard lion.
Theon was right. It had already fallen. They just didn't know it yet, and there was no hope for them. But it might have been nice to take the black. I like that plan.
Yeah, if they were going to be executed, I would like it to have been swift and as painless as possible. The way it was is horrible, but
as you point out, there is now a huge army back in the north, and so Stannis's prospects take a downturn for sure. He would have hoped that Moat Cailin would have made the phrase and Boltons get stuck for a little while longer than this.
Right.
But in actual fact, Roose didn't lose a minute because he hadn't even arrived when it fell.
Right. Yeah. It took 3 days. Maybe that's how long it takes to get through the neck.
Oh, maybe because of the narrowness of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But now you see Stannis really is going to need the 3,000 men that Jon is promising from the mountain clans because this was not it wasn't a huge army, but there were multiple thousands of men in this army. So, and now that the army is in the north, we know that Cersei wants Jon dead. She had a whole plan to send Osney Kettleblack to Castle Black to kill Jon. So now that her army, an extension of her army, is in the north, could this, affect Jon in some way?
Yeah, it could, but of course, timeline-wise, she's still got that plan ongoing at this point, so she doesn't need this.
You're right. She doesn't need this yet.
Yes. So, but yes, it's definitely a fallback when her other plans fall flat. Of course, when her other plans fall flat, she has other things to worry about.
She does. Jon is probably the last thing on her mind by the end of a piece.
You know who I blame? I blame that Jon Snow fella.
Yes. I take your meaning for sure.
Uh-huh. And of course, we both worry for Jane. Ramsay is cruel and sadistic, and has. I think Ramsay might be the worst. Might be the worst of them all.
Yeah,
worse than Viserys. Worse than Joffrey.
I don't know that Joffrey or Viserys would do the things that Ramsay has done, and sadly, Jane very well could become the new target of torture.
Yeah,
much like Joff and Sansa. Possibly, Roose being there now, present, could stop it. Yeah. I think he might know the importance of this is Arya Stark. You cannot mistreat Arya Stark the way that I know you like to mistreat people.
Yeah.
But it'd be a bad look, torturing the last living Stark. So, but then one final thing is Theon knows the truth of Faria, and that makes him dangerous. Too dangerous to live? I don't know.
Next up, we're going to see Cersei's nemesis, Jon, at the wall.
That's right. Enemy number one.
There are 4 ways that you can help us out. You could leave us a positive review and a 5-star rating. You can snag some merchandise while our store is open. ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal. There you can become a sustainer at any of the various levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interest. Join Devon on the small council with us. Thank you
Please
again,
do.
Devon.
Yes, thank you.
Or you can donate directly to our cause through our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, you can send us a text. The link is at the top of every episode's show notes. Just please keep in mind, we have no means of replying, but we do enjoy reading them. And if you're interested in keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, such as Simon posting photos of himself at the soccer match a week or so ago, well, you can check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.